Is The Lord of the Rings far-right literature? No. No, it's not.
No, I am not.
Welcome back. My name is Ben. I'm the Librarian of the Rings, and today we're talking about whether or not The Lord of the Rings is far-right literature. Now, on my bingo sheet when I started this channel of things that I might possibly be talking about, there were a lot of different things for this year. Things like the Tales of the Shire video game, the Rings of Power Season 2, and the War of the Rohirrim feature film. There's just a lot of things happening in the Tolkien news right now. But not on my list of things was that I would be talking about a candidate for the Vice President of the United States and an MSNBC news host and their thoughts on The Lord of the Rings. Not on my radar at all. But it's 2024, and here we are. So, this all started because J.D. Vance became the vice presidential nominee, and then Rachel Maddow on MSNBC decided that since J.D. Vance is a fan of Tolkien, that must make The Lord of the Rings far-right literature. Which is just kind of wild, and I can't even believe that these sentences are coming out of my mouth. It's such a weird colliding of my worlds, because obviously I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I do run this channel after all. But I was also a political science major in college, and so I've spent a lot of time thinking about and being part of the political world. And it's just crazy to me that this kind of connection is being made here, and that we have to talk about it and try and clear up this idea that The Lord of the Rings is far-right literature, because it 100% is not. So where does this kind of come from? Well, J.D. Vance has a venture capitalist firm called Narya, which is of course the name of the Ring of Fire in The Lord of the Rings. It's the ring that Gandalf has, the one that he uses to bolster the hearts of those around him. And there are a number of these companies that are set up using Lord of the Rings names for some reason, because different people are fans of them and they want to bring in these names. Probably the most notable of these is Peter Thiel's company Palantir, which shows that he doesn't really get what Tolkien was talking about with the Palantir. Regardless, there are a number of these companies. One of the more recent ones is called Anduril, after Aragorn's sword. And Rachel Maddow tries to make this connection, saying that because these conservative people appropriate Tolkien's names into their companies, then The Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's works must be far-right literature.
Lord of the Rings is a sort of favorite cosmos for naming things and cultural references for a lot of far-right and alt-right figures, both in Europe and the United States.
See, appropriation is not endorsement. In fact, it's often the opposite. And so just because these people can come along and take Tolkien's names and slap them onto their companies, that doesn't mean that it's an endorsement from Tolkien, who has long been dead and may have held completely different political views. Now, it's no wonder that some of these people are Tolkien fans, because there are so many Tolkien fans in the world. J.R.R. Tolkien was arguably the most influential author of the 20th century, and so fans of his are found everywhere, all over the world, and of all different political persuasions. And of course, the Peter Jackson film trilogy was one of the most successful film franchises of all time. So it's no wonder that we would find people from J.D. Vance's age group being fans of The Lord of the Rings. So we find these fans everywhere, and Vance has actually said that he thinks Tolkien's works did impact his ideology. But the thing is, The Lord of the Rings spans so many characters and so many different events. There's so much going on in it that, of course, anyone can find a reflection of their own worldview there. Now, Tolkien himself was a religious man, and he would almost certainly be considered conservative by today's standards. So that's just the thing. Almost anybody living in the 1950s would be considered conservative by today's standards. And British politics are absolutely nothing like American politics. They don't work on the same form of government as we do. A lot of their issues are completely different. And so to try and compare British and American politics is something that you can't even really do. And then to try and paste a current American political label onto Tolkien, who isn't even alive anymore, is absolutely ludicrous. I don't know where Rachel Maddow is coming from, but she clearly doesn't understand anything about Tolkien, especially because she talks about Narya, that word, and she doesn't even seem to know what it means, and then she compares it to the word Aryan.
He called it Narya, N-A-R-Y-A, which you can remember because it's Aryan, but you move the N to the front. Apparently that word has something to do with elves and rings from the Lord of the Rings series. I don't know.
And there is no way in this world that Tolkien, who was writing The Lord of the Rings during World War II, was naming his ring after Nazi ideologies. That's just ludicrous to even think. And I don't know where this kind of thing even comes from, except that she found out she could make an anagram out of it. Tolkien obviously cared a lot about words, and he carefully selected his words and created his own languages.
I don't know.
I personally hate that some of these people use Tolkien's names in their companies. I find it really annoying as a Tolkien fan to have to see these words used over and over again in these political conversations or these business conversations, and I don't think it's right or appropriate for them to do so, but they are. That's just kind of where we're at. The other thing is there is a strain of hyper-conservative Tolkien fans out there, and you will find them on my videos and other videos in the comments, and I mostly shut that down in my comments, but you'll find them other places. And these self-reported Tolkien fans like to try and shut down anything that they think is woke or whatever. So for example, they hate Black Aragorn from Magic the Gathering, and they hate that there's going to be a strong female lead in the War of the Rohirrim, and they think that they can just kind of pigeonhole Tolkien into their own political views. Now that's wrong too, and it's obviously not true, because Tolkien had many different political views throughout his life, and only some of them would correspond to any political party today. One good example of this is one of Saruman's main sins is deforestation, something that is strongly associated with the environmental groups today that is not associated with conservatives at all, is a hatred of deforestation. Then there's also the issue of strong female leads. Well, some people think that that's an abomination to have Tolkien work have a strong female lead. Tolkien actually wrote really strong female characters. Of course, in The Lord of the Rings you have Éowyn.
I am no man.
And Galadriel, but they're not the leads. But within Beren and Luthien, you have one of the strongest female leads ever in Luthien, and really one of the very first times that the script was flipped and you had the princess who was rescuing the man. And that's something that Tolkien wrote, and he wrote it a long time ago.
A long time ago.
So there's just two examples. Of course, you can cherry pick whatever you want to try and make Tolkien's views fit with your own views. So we can have fans of Tolkien from all walks of life.
What about side by side with a friend?
I could do that.
Any background and any political persuasion. And just because someone's a fan of something doesn't mean that that thing is an endorsement of that person's views. So no, The Lord of the Rings is not far-right literature, and you're not a bad person if you like The Lord of the Rings. Now, hopefully next week I can get back to talking about normal stuff and just making people mad about the Rings of Power. Until next time, farewell wherever you fare. May your ears receive you at your journey's end.